Hello folks, welcome to another video on Java development interview. This was for Java backend role for experienced professional having 5 plus of experience. Interviewer started with this question: how Hashmap works internally. Few points to remember regarding Hashmap. Hashmap allows null key and null values. In Hashmap, there is no guarantee of the order of their addition. Hashmap uses node class for storing map entries. It stores entries in the form of bucket and have default capacity of 16. It heavily relies on equal and hashcode method for put and get operation, and it's not thread safe. This diagram will show you how Hashmap looks from inside. This is how it works internally. It uses node class. It uses equal and hashcode methods for put and get operation. Upon calling the put method, the key's hashcode determine the bucket for storing the key and value. If an existing key and key with the same hashcode exists, the equal method is used. If true, the value is overwritten, otherwise a new mapping is created in the bucket. If no key with the same hashcode exists, the mapping is inserted into the bucket. For hashmap get operation, the keys hashcode determine the bucket for finding the values. Entries are traversed within the bucket to locate the entry using hashcode and equal methods. If a match is found, the value is returned, otherwise null is returned. Other aspects including hashing algorithm for key-based bucket retrieval and rehashing of the mapping. Difference between HTTP request methods: get, put, and post. This is how an typical HTTP request look like. HTTP requests can have body, header, query string, HTTP versions. So HTTP post request is used to create a new resource. So post request requires a body in which you define the data of the entity to be created. Similarly, HTTP GET request is used to read or retrieve the resource. Also, HTTP put request is used to modify the resource, would update the entire resource with the data that is you passed in the body's payload. There is one interesting question they have asked me. Write a program to reverse the array of string without using predefined method in the Java. So we don't have to use the existing Java APIs to reverse the string of arrays. We have to write this program manually. That's what the challenge was. Difference between comparable and comparator in Java. So comparable used whenever we need a natural ordering for a class object, then we should be using comparable interface. Also, comparable interface have compare to method. That's where the real operations happens. Whenever we want to sort the objects, then we wanted to sort it in a user-defined way, we should be using comparator, and it has inbuilt method of compare, which in which we have to send or pass two objects, object 1 and object 2, and it compares these objects and returns the sorted objects. So interviewer started diving into the DB side of it. So he asked me what is the JDBC template, what is statement, what is prepared statement, what is callable statement. These statements used in executing SQL queries, and we can pass parameters using prepared statement. In callable statement, we can call the store procedure and all. So basically, querying the database. What are these annotations? At component and at auto-wired annotations. At component, it's a stereotype annotation that marks a class as a Spring Bean. Spring scans your project for classes annotated with add component. During application startup, these classes are then managed by Spring container, meaning Spring will instantiate them. It injects any required dependency into them, make them available for auto wiring in other. other beans. Also, AutoWired is used to inject dependency into bean managed by Spring. You can mark field setter methods or constructor arguments with @AutoWired. Spring will automatically find a compatible bean in the Spring application context and inject it into field method or constructor. What is SQL injection? SQL injection is a web security vulnerability that allows an attacker to interfere with queries that an application makes to its database. This can allow an attacker to view the data that they are not normally able to retrieve. This might include data that belong to other users or any other data that application can access. Interviewers started asking me questions regarding Hibernate. So, what is session and session factory in Hibernate? Session represent a single threaded unit of work in Hibernate. It is used to perform database operations such as saving, updating, deleting, and querying the object. And session factory is used for creating a session instance in Hibernate, typically initialized once during application startup and shared across the application. What is HQL? HQL stands for Hibernate Query Language. In a nutshell, it's a special query language designed for Hibernate, a popular object relational mapper framework in Java. What are joins? With the help of joins, you can combine the data from multiple tables. They allow you to retrieve related information from different tables based on shared fields. These are some of the common joins: inner join, left join, right join, full outer join. What is the difference between primary key and foreign key? Primary key ensures each row in a table has a unique identifier. This prevents duplicate record and allows for efficient data retrieval. A table can only have one primary key. It's typically composed of one or more columns that uniquely identify a row. It should not be null, whereas foreign key establishes a link between two tables. It references the primary key of another table, and a table can have a multiple foreign keys, and it can be null. This is one of the classic example where primary key and foreign keys with different tables are relating to each other. In Java interview, always expect a REST API question where interview asked me, what is REST API? So REST API it stands for a representational state transfer. It's popular architecture style for designing web APIs. In short, it defines a set of rules for how APIs communicating using HTTP request and response. When to use encapsulation and abstraction in your project. Use encapsulation to protect an object's internal state and control access to its data. Use abstraction to focus on what's rather than how of an object. Explain lazy loading and eager loading. Lazy loading delays loading. Data is retrieved only when it is explicitly needed, and eager loading is loading everything upfront. All related data is fetched along with the primary object in a single database query. What is the use of these annotation in your project? Add gate mapping and spring add post mapping. These are Spring Boot annotations again. We generally use add gate mapping to handle HTTP GET request. Add post mapping is used to handle HTTP post requests. These requests are typically used to submit the data to the server for creation or update purpose. What is exception handling rule for method overriding? Rule number one, no checked exception. If the superclass method doesn't declare any exception, the overriding method in the subclass cannot declare a checked exception. However, it can still declare unchecked exception. Secondly, same or subclass exception. When a superclass method declares a checked exception, The overriding method in the subclass can declare the same exception or subclass of the exception. This allows for more specific exception handling in the subclass. Explain Spring MVC flow in detail. In this diagram, you can see MVC architecture. M stands for model, V stands for view, C stands for controller. There is an incoming request coming in a front controller passing this request to the controller where it is handling the request, and based on the request it is creating a model. Then it is passing that model to the front controller. Then front controller is passing that model to view template where view is resolved and a response is returned to front controller, and then front controller is returning back the response. This is how MVC works. What happens when there is a exception occurs in finally block? The original exception is suppressed. This means the original exception is not propagated to the caller of the method. The exception thrown from the finally block become the new exception that is propagated to the caller. This is what happens. What is the diamond problem in Java? So diamond problem in Java occurs when if a class implement two interface and both the interface declare a method with the same signature but different default implementation. The implementing class must provide its own implementation of the method to resolve the ambiguity. What is multi-level inheritance? In multi-level inheritance, base class is extended by derived class 1 and derived class 1 is extended by derived class 2. It's a chain of inheritance where multi-level inheritance happens, but this is not allowed in Java. What is the difference between string buffer, and string builder? String is immutable, whereas string builder and string buffer is not. It is mutable. String is stored in constant pool. String builder and string buffer is stored in a heap memory. Thread safety wise, string is not used in the threaded environment as it is immutable. And string builder is not thread safe, so it is used in a single threaded environment, whereas thread buffer is safe to use in a multi-threaded environment. What is the hierarchy of exception? Exception and error comes from a throwable class, and exception have checked and unchecked exceptions. Also, error have different errors like stack overflow error, out of memory error. There are some more questions they have asked me. I'm putting down here for your reference. Please do prepare and clear the interview. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.